Welcome back, everyone, to the Culture Based Podcast. I'm Dustin. He's Blake. We are the Culture Based. So glad to be here on a chilly December morn, at least at the time that we're recording this anyway. I got the heater going on at my feet here in the studio, and my phalanges. I'm like sitting here doing this. If I do this during the episode, if you hear this noise, it's me warming up my phalanges.
What's chilly in Georgia, though?
What's that? I mean, it's 30 here this morning.
Okay, that's cold. Yeah. It was only 27 here. So I just don't know. Like, you're like, It's cold. And I was like, yeah, it is cold. But the other day you were like, man, it's a beautiful day. And I'm like looking outside like, we're not seeing the same thing.
We're not seeing the same day.
No. Because it's the season of gray here in Indiana.
Yeah, it has. We had a really, really rough weekend this past weekend, at least at the time of recording this, weather-wise here. A lot of rain, a lot of bad weather, really all over the country. Tennessee having some tornadoes just rain everywhere. But anyway, we're not here to talk about the weather. Everybody's like,
I want the news, not the weather.
What podcast is this? Do they know they're recording? Like that.
What a podcast. They tell us the news that happened 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Wait, what happened? This just in, Abe Lincoln's been shot. Okay. That's an inside joke. But it is too soon. Anyway, we're here to part 5. We're here to talk about part 5 of our 6 building blocks of scalable teams. Before we get into that, though, I want to remind you that we're here to help leaders know what they're about, show where they're going, and build or develop scalable teams to get them there. If you're listening on an audio podcast platform, thank you so much for tuning in. We'd really appreciate a 5-star review. If you are watching on YouTube, thanks for tuning in as well. We would really appreciate it if you would hit the like button, the thumbs up, subscribe, and ring the bell like we do. Would super appreciate that. You can follow us anywhere on the socials, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn. We even have a Facebook page no one knows about, at the Culture Base, BASE. No, we were just talking about that recently. Anyway, at the Culture Base, BASE, or you can find us at theculturebase.com if you or your organization are interested in having a free 30-minute strategy session with us on anything that we talk about during these episodes, or anything else that you got going on that would help you develop that scalable team to get you where you need to go. We'd love to chat with you about that at theculturebase.com. So with all that said, one of my chickens just decided it's time to lay an egg.
Oh.
And when they do that, they call it out. Do you hear it? You don't hear it? I'm glad you don't hear it, because it's obnoxious. Anyway, we're grateful for them. They pull their own weight around here. Yeah. And they're doing
working chickens, right?
They're working chickens.
Some strutting
pets.
Yeah, just the thing to look at. Those are working chickens.
They're working it, and they're working it good. Anyway, they're going on. It's like the Cadbury bunny out there. Anyway. This is off the rails.
Yeah.
We're like 5 minutes in. We're talking weather and bunny chickens. Anyway, so part 6 today, Blake. You know what? You can build an incredible, part 5 today. I have a 6-part series. You can build an incredible company with a compelling vision, attractive culture, and all the best talent being onboarded in top-notch ways, but you cannot market as thriving quite yet. A scalable team and great culture understands the sky's the limit when it comes to developing your talent to the next level. So what does developing your team look like? That's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. You know, there are tons of statistics out here. This one actually hits me probably like the hardest, just because it's way too high in my opinion.
A really large number.
It's a huge number, but 94% of employees, this is what builtin.com says, that 94% of employees would stay longer at their current company if they felt the organization invested in their professional development. 94%, even if they're lying 20%, I don't even care. That's still crazy high that many people would say, if we were developed, we'd stay. Like, we would feel that loyalty. And I think that this hits a really soft spot of all humanity. And that is this idea of loyalty and development and how they really coincide so closely. In my book, Uncultured, I talk a lot about the generational differences. And one of the questions we look at often is, how does this generation define loyalty? How do the boomers define loyalty? How do Gen Zs and millennials and Gen Xers, how do they define loyalty? Because when you understand that, and you understand that development has an aspect in every one of those, it's almost just straight foolishness not to develop people. And I know, we've talked about the age old fear that most business owners have that, well, if I develop them, they'll leave. Statistically, there's more evidence that if you don't, they're going to leave. So when we see a number this high, and to understand that you can complain about whether a generation or a person is loyal or not loyal, there is that loyalty aspect goes both ways, right? And the one in which the team, the organization goes and develops someone is the development side. Loyalty is that return, right? And so
Yeah.
it's just crazy that 94% of people said, yeah, if we were developed, if they focused on our personal development, we'd go deeper, we'd go farther. But one thing I want to hit before we go too much deeper here into the SLD, the strategy, logistics, distribution, is what we mean and what is being developed. Okay. So I also talk a lot about the differences between training and coaching. Okay. So we use the word development as this like overarching title, but really that breaks into multiple aspects. And the two that I think, if you focus on these two, loyalty is just going to abound, are training and coaching. Coaching is a focus on the member, the individual, the character, someone growing up as a professional. The training is the technical, the thing that they're doing over and over. And I'm sure other people have their own definitions of this stuff, but even just separating those things helps you see that you're not just focusing on the thing they're doing, but you're also focusing on them. EOS, they talk a lot about, it's about finding the right people, doing the right things the right way at the right time. And how do you do that if you don't invest in the right people, the coaching programs, doing the right things, still coaching, but also at the same time starting to hit a training aspect. So development programs aren't just, let me teach them how to install this widget or develop this thing. It's also about developing the person. What do you think about that, Dustin? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I love what you were saying about the difference between training and coaching. I think there's that is a big difference, and I want to say too, to your point about the 94% being a high number, and organizational leaders being afraid of, hey, if I train them, they're going to leave. Blake already addressed, like, hey, that thought is statistically not accurate. They're more likely to leave if you don't train them. But let's just say they do leave. Let's say you invest in these people that are on your team, and they become so talented that they decide to take their talents to South Beach or wherever it is they're going, right? Wouldn't you rather be known? Wouldn't you rather have your brand be a company that cares enough about people to grow them rather than a company that ignores them and just uses and abuses? Right? Are you going to treat your employees like running backs, where you're just like the next man up, let's go, just run them through the mill until they all break? Or are you going to treat them like actual people that can take your business to the next level? And they might leave. That's just reality. They very well might leave. But just because they leave doesn't make you or your organization any less effective.
Yeah.
I do firmly believe that if you were to genuinely train people, not for the sole purpose of benefiting your own company, but for also keeping the person in mind first, I believe if you were to do that consistently, and if people still chose to leave, that honestly you're better off without them.
Yeah. And
because they didn't see the value in what you were doing for them.
yeah.
And if they can't see that, you don't want them on your team.
That's right. And at the end of the day, like, the big fear here, I think, is a human fear, right? It is a very like deep in our hearts, we're all afraid of looking like a dummy or getting taken advantage of, right? This is why we like hide our failures and we don't share them at times. And so we're afraid, well, if I train them, they'll leave. And now all that's worthless. And, I'll look like an idiot. They took advantage of me. And which you got to get that mindset out completely, because what's happening, if you live with that, you're accepting something that's even worse. And you're accepting the idea that I'm not going to train them because I'm afraid they'll leave. But what you're doing is you're saying, I'm okay with a subpar or below average workforce. I'm okay with a subpar below average product or service that I'm offering my client. Well, then why are you doing this? If you're just okay with doing trashy work, why are you, like, there are other ways to make money. Go do those, because doing this whole business thing isn't easy. And if you're just going to do subpar work, then don't do it at all.
Yeah. So as we're getting into this part 5 development, I want you to understand, kind of just to scale back for a second, or to step back for a second and kind of see how all these have been put together. We talked about the foundational pieces of vision and culture. Those are the first two foundational pieces of these building blocks of scalable teams. Then we had the middle two sections, kind of the glue that holds everything together, right? This is where we're attracting and onboarding the right people. Now we're topping it off. Now this is the icing on the cake. This is the thing that's going to, as you're building this building, this is what's going to pierce you through the clouds. It's what's going to surpass you with the competition. And this is where we're going to develop and retain. And so these building blocks are topped off. This is what we call the amplify section, because now we're turning it up. We're going from just being like the company that we should be to the company that we could be, and when we're amplifying these things. And so you're amplifying who you have on the team with this topper of the two key elements of develop and retention. And so now we're going to get into this thing we call SLD. It's the strategy, logistics, and distribution. It's what we've been talking about in each one of these building blocks, so that you know how to strategize, you know how to put the logistics in place, and you know how to distribute these things that we're talking about. So Blake, let's get into the strategy of developing. I know you talked a little bit about the difference between training and coaching, but let's start there.
Yeah, so we hit the technical first, right? Or you don't. You say, hey, we've identified we need to do these coaching and trainings. I think you have something on the technical, don't you?
I do. I feel like a lot of people stop here. Yeah. I think a lot of businesses will say, I've trained them.
Yeah.
That's on what it is that I'm asking them to do. I've done my job. I don't need to do anything else. And since it's the Christmas season and I love movie quotes, I'm gonna pop this movie quote in here from Four Christmases, when Robert Duvall. So if you don't know the concept of Four Christmases, this couple has to go to 4 different Christmases because each set of parents has been divorced and remarried or whatever. And so Vince Vaughn, his dad, played by Robert Duvall, they have to go over to his house. It's a giant mess or whatever. Yeah. And Vince Vaughn is talking to his dad about how him and his mom aren't together anymore. And he's like, you neglected her, you pushed her out of your life. And he's like, I fed her, I put a roof over her head, and I never lied to her face. I spoiled her is what I did. And as funny as that sounds, which it makes me laugh every single time. As funny as that sounds, a lot of business leaders think that way when it comes to training them. It's like, hey, you know what? I gave them a job. I showed them how to do it. They're spoiled. I'm not going to take time. I'm not going to take time to develop them any further than that. They don't need anything for that. They just need to do what I've asked them to do. And if that's your mindset, you should just pause right here and go evaluate that, because you're not going to be able to build scalable teams with a mindset like that. So yeah, that's my story on training versus coaching.
That's good. That is really good. I think when we
look, stop laughing at that.
Yeah, the strategy aspect of the SLD, we talk about storyboarding a bunch.
Yeah,
and it's a very visual idea. I know which is crazy because this is the vision. This is the strategy. What are we gonna do? I think this is where the best thing you can do is just think about your company at large and just start mind dumping all the programs you think are needed. We are often on the go and we don't take time to have thinking time to actually work on an idea. And so here's the thing. I know without a shadow of a doubt no matter who it is listening to this, that you've thought, man, it would be great if we had this program in our team. I know it because I talk to leaders all the time. They're like, yeah, I've thought about that before. We need to have this and we need to do this. Nobody captures any of that stuff. They don't put it down in the same place. They don't think through from there because they know this development program stuff sounds like a lot of work. But I'm here to tell you it is. It's a ton of work, okay? But the return is so far beyond what you could imagine. And what your vision and your brain is telling you about how good of an idea it is to have that, it's right. It sees further than you can see. And so it knows, man, if there was a training program like this in place, this would be fixed, this would be better, you'd be more scalable. And so this is where this very beginning part, like you can start like trying to create strategy, but I think the best thing is just mind dump. Get all those programs in the same place, start putting them all down. To think about things like, is this for entry level development? Think about should we have leadership development? And then after you've gone through all of this, I really want you to, like, after you got it all down, to say, okay, where is our greatest risk of turnover? What's our greatest risk? Okay, let's go for that low hanging fruit. If we're going to invest some time, let's look at our greatest turnover risk, or what level is the hardest to retain, or kind of, what's that word? Something. Replace. There it is. What's the hardest to replace? Okay.
I thought it was going to be a way bigger word than that. I was like, recyclization.
Not even a word that's not even a word that like is a dash to anything else.
No, no, it's just replace.
But yeah, but what is the highest risk of turnover, or what level is the hardest to retain or replace? And when you think through those things and you go, oh, okay, so there's this area right here. If we focused on it, we would get a lot more people in, and we're needing people in this area. Or, man, if we lose this middle level of management, I don't know how we're going to replace it, and it's really volatile. Okay, well, then we need to get in there and we need to put a development program around those things. Okay. Yeah. And so sounds like a lot. It is, but take it piece by piece. But if you're not putting all these ideas in one place for a mind dump in your strategy to say, okay, here are the ones we're going to start with, here's the next one, just pick your top 3 and we'll go to the next step of logistics. Do you have anything else on strategy?
Yeah, just side hustle there on the mind dump. I want to just let people know that the mind dump, practically speaking, because mind dump is something that I tell all of anyone that I coach or consult with. I'm pro mind dumping. I have a running list at all times, and do not mind dump in multiple places. You are setting yourself up for failure. I don't care if it's sticky notes. I don't care if it's the back of your hand. Whatever it is, do mind dump in that one spot. I know that seems like extremely elementary, but trust me, future you will thank you for doing that. Because if you're having to, I know I wrote that down. It's not in here. It's not here. It's not here. Where is it? Have one place, put it there. If it's a journal, it's a journal. If it's a tablet, it's a tablet. If it's a running note on your phone, that's great. Doesn't matter. Have the one spot. That's what I would say about that.
Yeah,
I'm pretty passionate about mind dumping. I think it's very, very beneficial for all leaders to do that. We could do another podcast on it.
And I would tell you seriously, if you're like, I don't know how to mind dump, I learned so much from Dustin and mind dumping and how to set it up and how to work through and the right questions to ask and how to not have that mindset of, if you're doing it with other people, not allowing the no monster, right? Like not allowing people that won't work because no. Mind dump needs to be as free as possible. And Dustin tells me this all the time. It needs to be this, if you had unlimited time and unlimited resources, what if? Okay. So if you can set it up like that, you're going to be able to come up with this stuff. Yeah. Do not self-edit ahead of time. Nope. Do not start being like, well, we can't do this because we don't have the right building. Okay, well, the right mind dump would say, we're going to figure out a way to get a building or build on or do something else later on. But they're not concerned about that. They're concerned about the why and the answer as quick as possible. Okay. Yeah. So, and if seriously, if anybody ever needs help with that, hit Dustin up and he will be able to help you infinitely better than anyone I've been able to do that with.
Awesome.
So, moving on to logistics.
Logistics, yeah.
Okay. This next part is another self-editing part that I think we get a little too into. And I think you got to just allow things to flow. Okay. So the first thing is with a program, a development program, or a book, I did it the same way. I think coming up first and starting to mind, you take the mind dump, you get one item, okay, and you say, oh, this is the one I'm going to focus on. Then start mind mapping, put that idea in the center, and then say, what ideas come off of this? Like, if it's a program for leadership, what are the top 8 to 10 things we need to hit on in leadership that are really important? So then you jump off and you're like, oh, I'll hit this item and just start drawing all those things. And then after you have this massive mind map of this development program idea, break it down and put it into an outline. Now, which one needs to come first? What stories are important with this? And what you're doing is you're creating your modules. Okay. You haven't had to write one bit of content yet. Don't jump in and start adding things. Just put those as little, like if you have platform development, you're like, oh, we have this platform. Oh, and one thing in that platform, just start doing little webs off of that. These mind maps that we learned in elementary school and that we stopped doing was the worst thing we could have ever done. We need to keep doing those mind maps because it allows that content, like Dustin was saying about even mind dumping in one place. This allows this content and ideas to be able to develop around it. And maybe it takes a week. Maybe you say for 20 minutes a day, I'm just going to focus on this mind map. Then do that. And then once you've got this mind map and you develop the outline and the way it's going to go, then you jump in. No, don't jump in yet. Just get 80% good. Okay. Just get like, if you're like, oh, it's not 100%, you'll never be there. But if you're like, yeah, this is 80% there. Okay. Stop, go to your team you're going to give this development to and show it to them, the outline, and say, what do you think's missing? They're going to tell you. They're going to show you. Go to the people who are already doing the thing that you're going to develop. Ask them, what are the things that are missing? Like, what would make this better? And then they're going to be like, oh, what about this? And you're going to be like, what? That's like key. How did I miss that? And they're going to help you develop the next 20%. And it's going to make it even like cleaner and better. And then you can start asking some of those next questions like, okay, well, what this type of training, how would it be like? Should this be video-based training? Should this be written training, like some kind of wiki where it's a visual showing you process-wise how to do this? Is this a phone call? Is this an in-person kind of training? Is this Zoom training? And you're starting to see, I got to figure out what kind of training it is. Like, what hits this generational person who's going to be in this position? And then you take it, you build it, and it doesn't have to be perfect. We're building the plane as we're flying it, and then you beta test it. You find people who are very forgiving, and you tell them, this is a beta test. We are looking for people, and I usually in our team say, hey, I'm looking for people who are hungry and want to beta test and give me good feedback. And then our team's like, oh, I'll do it. And then they come and beta test, and I get, hey, I didn't see that you talked about this. Could you add this in? And I'm like, great idea. And instead of recording a whole nother video in that module, I'll just add another video. Hey, here's my other thought. Amber said this about this, and I want to add this in because it is really important. And now you're just building that whole program as you're flying it. So it's just a great process. So just don't get paralysis by analysis. I think this is the thing. You got to go for a minimum viable product here.
Yeah, that's what I was going to add to this point, is that starting and prioritizing development is the key. Like, starting is the hardest part of anything, right? And if you're just like, I don't get so overwhelmed by the beast that it may seem in front of you, because like we said earlier, yes, it is a lot of work, but the hardest part of the work is starting the work. And you don't have to be perfect to get it out there. Like Blake said, just communicate. Hey, we're trying this. This isn't like don't stand up and pretend to have all the answers right out the gate. because you'll be quickly found out, and they'll be like, I'm not going to even pay attention to any development they offer because they don't even know what they're talking about anyway. But if you just come with an open, honest spirit of saying, like, listen, this is something that we want to shift to being more important for us, and we are willing to learn along the way. If you're willing to learn with us, let's walk through this together, and let's test some things out. Let's just try it and see. But prioritizing development is the other key too. Like, you have to prioritize this. If this is something that you're like,
so good,
that would be great if one day we could have somebody developing our teams. Let me just say right now, if you are thinking to yourself, it would be great if we had someone to develop our teams, you're looking at them like this. It's you. Like, you can do this. You don't have, it doesn't have to be somebody. Yes, you might get into it and realize that there may be someone already in your company who's more gifted, or some, someone may show up in your company and they're more gifted in, or you may find another third party to work with and they're more gifted in, whatever it is. Like, if you have the conviction that this is something you should be doing, which, if so, good on you. You should have this conviction. And you're looking around going, I don't know who can do it. Start with you. Even if you're mid-level management, just start and prioritize it and say, listen, I know that some things may slip through the cracks. This is where kind of like I always refer back to Eisenhower matrix of urgent and important. You know what I'm saying? Like, some of these things, a lot of the things that are on your plate aren't really all that urgent and important. You know what I mean? Even if it's things that have been delegated to you, it might not be as urgent or as important as you think. So why not just go, okay, let's take care of the important stuff, but really, like, this needs to be part of the important stuff. And you should have some urgency in it, because if you don't act on it quickly, it's going to be one of those things that one day you're going to look up and be like, man, I've always wanted to. I've always wanted to, but we never have.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. There are two things I think of here. One, if you struggle hard with it like this, and how do I do this? And I don't know, I'm just in a rut. This is why we're here. Okay. We help other teams create and develop scalable teams. We know development programs. We do them daily. And in fact, that leads me to my second thing is, if you say, I'll just wait till I get like a half day where I can go and really just build out the whole program, you won't.
Nope.
I promise you, you won't do it. Even trying to build a development program in a day doesn't give it time to breathe, and doesn't give you time to get good feedback. And like it takes time, and it takes time over time. Okay. So it's good that you put effort in, but you're only going to be able to do one chunk. And then you're going to have to wait to the next time you get a spare 4 hours. BTW, when was the last time you had 4 spare hours ever? Okay. When you're working 60, 70-hour weeks, you're not getting 4. Like, you're on rent, man. You've lost some, right? You're on notice. Okay. So this is where you've got to realize, give it even 20 minutes a day. That's what I do. 2 hours ago, I spent 20 minutes. I just put a timer on. I told myself to begin, and I started. And I spent 20 minutes either recording something, doing a mind map on something. It doesn't matter. I just need to put 20 minutes in every day towards this, and doing that whole 20-mile march. And you're like, 20 minutes isn't enough for something. It is. It's enough for one thing. And 1 week I get an hour and 40 minutes done of content. And in 2 weeks, I'm up to 3 hours and something, and in 3 weeks, do you see that development that you thought, if I could just get 4 spare hours, you can get easily in 2 weeks if you just spend the time. And that focus time, 20 minutes, it sounds like that's not enough. It's the clearest 20 minutes you'll have. Okay. It is. It's just the cleanest that you'll get, because you're like, ooh, I've got an end time and I need to get on this. And it doesn't matter if what I write is good or bad. It doesn't matter. I just need to write it out there and I'll be good. I think Jerry Seinfeld talks about this practice of doing a joke a day. And he's like, it doesn't have to be good. Just, I have to do the practice of doing it once every day. And usually it trips into another joke, or trips into another idea, or trips into another concept. Same thing with development. The more you just make this part of your practice and of your daily routine, and you can spare 20 minutes that you probably would have been scrolling pointless emails anyway, it's going to go to the right stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. So before we continue, I want to remind you. So, like Blake said, we're here to help you in this. So, we're going to get to distribution here in a second, but just right here in the middle of the show, I want to remind you, if this is something that we can help you with, go to theculturebase.com, click on a strategy button, and we will have a free 30-minute strategy session with you on this topic. So let's get into distribution, which we were talking about: strategy, logistics, distribution. Distribution is where we're communicating all of this stuff, Blake. So how do we communicate this development process?
Yeah, this is where you start saying, once you've got this thing built, once it's been fleshed out, gone through beta, you start saying, all right, how often do we need to be doing these trainings? How are you communicating with the team to access these trainings? This was a big dumb moment of mine where I had developed 2 or 3 programs and was getting frustrated. I was like, guys, I've developed these programs and no one's doing them. And finally, I had one of my teammates go, where are they?
What programs?
Yeah. Like you keep talking about these programs. Like, are you talking about the in-person one we do at this point? And I'm like, well, yeah, but I also have it all on video and I've recorded 20, 40 hours of content. Why aren't you all checking it out? You've been asking for it. And they're like, well, we're still asking. We don't know where it's at. And so something so simple of, oh, okay. So how often do I need to reiterate, hey, team, the reminder here on your Teachable account, on your Lessonly, or whatever other kind of platforms are out there, on your LMS, learning management system. How do you access that? How do you make sure you're getting the content? How do you follow up with your team? How do they get to ask questions back to you? If you don't think through those things, you're just creating content to live in the middle of nowhere. And like, even if you built the greatest, house of all and it's sitting on Mars and nobody can get to Mars, that makes it hard for them to do. So this is where you got to think, how do I get this to them? You've got some ideas on this too, Dustin. What are your thoughts on how to distribute this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking for low cost, effective ways to get things out. And one of the things I've been helping with some of my consulting clients of being able to, we talk about in the EOS system about documenting process. And we did a whole episode on process, where we're able to document these things. And really, that's what we're talking about when it comes to distribution, is documenting these processes and sending them out there in such a way. And I honestly think that a free Loom account is the way to go. Now, here's why I say free Loom account, because the free Loom limits you to 5-minute videos.
I like it.
How great is that?
Yeah.
How great is it? They're like, if I can't explain this to you in 5 minutes, I need to refine it some more.
Yep.
I actually did one recently for a volunteer position that I do. I volunteer with a nonprofit creative company, and they were asking me to train some of our new volunteers on some of the ways that we use MailChimp. And I hopped on there and I had to do like 2.5 free looms to send it to them. And I thought to myself, this is too much. We need to simplify this.
Yeah.
There's too much going on here.
Yeah.
And so I honestly think that free limitation of a Loom account, if you don't know what Loom is, it's where you can screen record something on your computer while also it records your face, and you can talk to people and kind of walk them through different processes and systems. And so if you have a process that you want to walk them through with visuals, you can do that. Or if you want to walk them through, if it's an online platform, you need to walk them through an LMS, anything like that, you can just hop on there, record yourself doing it real quick, and then send it out via Slack or an email or something. Tell everybody, hey, this is a 5-minute video I need you to watch today. If you did one of those a week, can you imagine how you just start there? If you just did one 5-minute Loom video each week to your team of here's how you do this.
Yep.
And just you shared your brain out there. The great part is that it lives forever. I work with another client who sent me a Loom 3 months ago. I still reference it. I still reference it because life happens and I forget. And so I want to make sure I'm doing it to the standards that he's asking me to do it. So I reference it. It's so easy. So easy. So I would highly recommend that.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I think that's all I've got. I think really in distribution, it's just making sure you use the language that other people are using. I think process, like Dustin's talking about, process trainings are a great low entry. If you're like, I don't really know the one place we need to start that's so heavy. Process is big. Process is part of Amplify. Like it's part of both. And both building blocks, as in development, and the next one of retention. If you don't create good processes, A players don't want to be around that. Okay. And if you're wanting to retain A players, you want to have good processes set up that create a quick system of doing something over and over. And so it is a development aspect, but it is a retention aspect as well. So I couldn't agree more with Dustin. Do those Loom videos, do some kind of process, and part of distribution that we cannot stress enough, make it available and make it clear where it's available.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is a great lead into our final episode of this series. Next week, we're going to finish out the 6 building blocks of scalable teams by talking about part 6. The very last building blocks is retain. It's the retention. How do we get people to stick around now that we've developed them? And so cannot wait to talk with y'all about that. It's going to be a great ending to the series. It's going to be a great ending to our year as well, as it'll be our last podcast of 2023. We can't wait to be with you. We'll talk to you then on the Culture Base podcast.